You made it to episode 4 of the Tour Operator Growth Podcast. We've had a great few episodes so far. Last week's episode, if you missed it, was with Brandon Lake, where he gave a broad overview of what the growth engine is. That sets the foundation of everything we're about to talk about in our next few episodes. So if you missed it, please go back to episode 3, last week's episode, to tune in. So basically, the growth engine is a framework that Resmark, Brandon, the team originally built to help grow Western River, his own tour business, and ultimately help our clients at Resmark succeed. But whether you're a client of ours or not, you could absolutely use this system. So we're going to dive into each and every piece of this system so that you can take what you learn and apply it in your own tour business if you want to grow. Today, we are throwing it back to stage 1 of the growth engine, which is called the dreaming stage. The dreaming stage has several pieces to it, and over the next few episodes, we're going to dive into each piece of that dreaming stage. But today, we're talking about one specific element within the dreaming stage, and that is your SEO strategy and how it attracts your ideal guests. So that could be from major search engines or from AI search. All right, everybody, let's go. Why, Greg, do you think your SEO strategy, or we should say, why are tour operators' SEO strategy part of that dreaming stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So SEO is part of this dreaming stage mainly because you got to get found, right? When people are dreaming, they're in the research mode of what do I want to. Well, I guess they're not necessarily always in the research phases at this point, but they're starting to think about like, where do I want to go on a trip? What do I want to do with my family this year? I know me and my wife, like, each year we kind of budget a certain amount of money towards trips every year, and so towards the end of a year, we kinda start thinking about the next year, and we start looking at, like, where are the different places we wanna go. And so that's when we're starting to do some Google searches where our intent at this point is not to buy anything. It's strictly research, it's strictly informational, trying to figure out where we should go. So some, statistics around this that we see on some of our clients' websites and just in general, typically a website, your top 2 kinda search sources are gonna be direct and Google, your revenue sources. So people come directly to your website or search you up in Google. And one of our clients, for example, they generated last year 21,000 in direct revenue and 16,000 in Google. That actually wasn't last year. Sorry, that was just the last 90 days. Um, so those are their top 2. The next piece of that, the next revenue source is social. So you have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those other social media resources that people are searching in. And so in that dreaming phase, it's changed since, you know, 2022, especially. And more people in this dreaming phase are really just trying to get information, but it's this new concept of zero click. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that. When we search now, we're going to Google, we're going to AI, whatever it might be, we're less likely to click into any search results because of the AI overviews or just the SERPs, all the different information that Google shows on their search page. We can often get kind of the high level information that we need at that point to kind of decide, do we want to continue searching or not?
Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing I think is so important about, having a good SEO strategy and really focusing on how to get found in search engines and in AI is because the more leads or the more bookings you have coming through search that are going directly to your website, the less you need to rely on OTAs and the less you can potentially spend in paid ads. So, depending on what your revenue goals are, usually you're filling that gap to get to your goal with paid ads. But if you're filling most of that gap to get to your goal in organic, that's amazing. That's a huge opportunity. So I want to dive into the nitty gritty. What do tour operators or what do we see tour operators focusing on to show up in search results? And we'll probably mainly focus on Google because we're looking at our client stats right now as we're speaking. And by far, Google is the number one search engine people are finding our tour companies from. AI is going up higher, so we're seeing those inquiries come through ChatGPT, Perplexity, and we're getting more volume every single month. But Google still beats everything. We even see the results from Bing and other search engines, but Google still dominates. So, what are some tactics that we implement for our tour operators to show up?
So the tactics, in my opinion, that we're using haven't changed that much over the years. There's just less clarity in what the best ways are. 10 years ago is pretty simple. You had kind of this checklist of things to make sure you're doing on the SEO side. And if you did those, you were pretty sure you're going to rank well. And now you still need to do that same checklist. You just don't have as much insight into how it's going to affect things. It's a lot more subjective now. How an algorithm can be subjective is beyond me, but that's the way that Google's kind of writing their algorithm now. Because in 2022 is when a lot of this changed. So August 2022 is when Google's first like helpful content update rolled out, and most people have probably heard of this. It was a huge thing. And it's basically Google saying, we're going to start demoting content that is created primarily for search engines and start, lifting people up that are providing content that is actually helpful to the user. So I remember websites 10, not even 10 years ago, I guess 5 years ago, where you'd go on it and it's like just tons of keywords on the site and you read things and it doesn't feel natural. It's not speaking to me as a user, it's speaking to Google. And I never liked that personally as a user experience designer. I was always like, this is not good for the user, but it was good
Keyword
for ranking. Yeah, keyword stuffing, and it was awful. And so now they've kind of gotten rid of that. And if you keyword stuff, you can actually get demoted a lot of times. And so it's made it a lot more natural. And so some of the tactics of actually getting ranked now is really just like being authentic. So in 2023, they made another update to that, which was adding an extra E to their EAT. So EEAT, which stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And the experience part was what was added. So basically, they want to have your website showing firsthand, like real life experience with the topic. So whether that's user generated content or content that makes it seem like you actually know what you're talking about versus just speaking to an algorithm. And then in 2024, that was actually all rolled into their, core algorithm. So now it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But with all of that, you really just need to focus on making sure your website is following all the traditional checkboxes of SEO. Good H1 structure or header structure, making sure your meta title, meta description are solid, making sure that you have good quality images, good quality content, and all of that. Good, site structure. But now it's even more important that it's user friendly. The content speaks to the user and that they can find what they want. And if you do that and you do it well, all of that together, you're going to show up in AI search. It's just going to happen.
I think most of that is pretty digestible for a lot of tour operators. They think, okay, obviously we don't want to put junk on our website. We want to put quality content. But then they get overwhelmed with, am I the one that has to write this quality content? How long is that going to take and whatnot? But it is so important to do that, to write blogs that have meaning, that are answering people's questions. I want to go back to something though. I don't want to um, fast forward too much here. You said have good header structure, have good H1s, have good meta descriptions. And now we're starting to get a little bit more technical. Um, we could assume they know what we're talking about here, but so many times we have calls with tour operators who think that they're doing really good with SEO until they run the reports and find out they're not. But they don't know those basics. So, what should that H1 actually say? Can you just give some very basic things, Greg? What is an H1? And how many H1s should you have? And how do you pick that phrase or few words that are going in that H1? Because that is such a crucial part to the overall strategy.
Right. Yeah. So if you don't know what headers are, you probably have used Microsoft Word or Google before, and how you can change the different font sizes, and they have heading one, heading two, or title, whatever it might be called. So it's basically that. From a heading structure, like from a design standpoint, the actual size matters. It helps users understand like this is the main point and these are sub points. So that hierarchy is important. Google doesn't probably care as much about the font size as the actual user does. But the difference between like a H1 and an H2 and an H3 is really like it's telling Google your H1 is saying this is what the page is about. So, for example, I'll use Moab Adventure Center as an example. We have a page that's called Moab River Rafting. It's all about Moab River rafting. It showcases a bunch of different trips for that they offer. And on that, their H1 is that main keyword that they want to focus on. Or it might be a couple keywords that are kind of very similar that you're trying to target for. And in their case, the main keyword is Moab River rafting. That's the search term that people are going to search. And so their H1 is right up towards the top. It's not actually in the that top like hero section with the big image. It's the section below, which is typically fine. And it says Moab River rafting, an unforgettable experience. So here they're tying into the emotion of the actual people that go on the trips and what people are looking for. Like, hey, this is going to be super fun, while also having that keyword in there. And with structure now, like the H1's probably if you're only going to have your keyword one place, that's the place to make sure it is that and like your meta title and meta description. But for sure, your H1 needs to have whatever that main keyword is. It used to be that your H2 and H3 should have it as well, but you can do it in a way that's less robot feeling now. And you also sometimes it works really well not to even have it in there. It just you kind of gotta if you have an SEO person, trust what they're recommending and understand that. But then on your page structure, when you go through the page, it should be your H1 at top, and then your like most prominent kind of sections. It's usually like you'll have a section. Here's a section for reviews. Here's a section for what trips we offer. That header of those sections is typically going to be an H2. So as I scroll down this page, the first H2 is the best single day rafting trips in Moab. So you can see here it's still reinforcing that Moab rafting trips key term, just in different order. And it's talking about single day. And then there's a section with a bunch of trips there. So your H3 now is going to support all of that, but it doesn't really have to, be as keyword heavy all the time, if that makes sense. So it's just really laying out that page structure and making sure you only have one H1. That's key. You can have multiple H2s, multiple H3s, H4s, whatever, but having one H1 that is keyword targeted is going to be massive. Like if that's the one thing you do, start there and make sure that that's the first header on your page. So just real quick, like I said on the Moab Adventure Center site that they have their H1 isn't the first thing on the page. So they have a header section and it says the best guided rafting trips in Moab, Utah. But that message right there is actually just a paragraph. So it's not a header. Sometimes people will do it as a span, which is a little bit more technical, but it's basically telling Google like these are words on the page, but they're not one of the headers that you need to look at. And so you can put content at the top above your H1. You just want to make sure that the first header, so H1, H2, H3, is your H1. You don't want your H3 to be above it or H2. It confuses Google a little bit. So that's kind of some of the nitty gritty without going too in depth on some of
No, that
this.
was perfect. Yeah, and still, this rule applies. Do not confuse Google. So we need to have this structure on your website so that we do not do that. We also want to have enough words on the page that are just simple words, paragraph text, and we want to make sure that they're interlinking. So if there's a keyword in that paragraph text, we are linking it to the appropriate blog post or to the appropriate tour page. Um, and when
I
we briefly mention oh, sorry, Greg, were you saying something?
Oh, I was just gonna say this just popped in my head as an
Uh,
example, just to like hit home what their header structure is. Maybe this isn't as relatable to everyone, but it makes sense in my head right now. Um, Back in the day when you like would write notes and send mail to people, we still get plenty of mail. There's like,
yeah,
at least in the United States, there's a very formatted way that you put the address on your letter, right? It's always who is it going to? So in my case, Greg Rosenhan. And then the next line is the street name. Not gonna tell you my street name. But then the next row
you
is
don't
like
have to
the
Google it.
yeah, the next row is the city like the city, state, and zip code, right?
Yeah,
So you can kind of
mhm,
picture that as your header structure. If on your mail you put like the those out of order, there's a good chance that mail is gonna get lost, or the person at the mail department is gonna be like, where does this go? I don't want to spend time
yep.
figuring this out. And so having that structure is the same on your website. It just makes it that much easier for the user and for Google or whatever is the bots scrubbing your website to understand what's the most important pieces here.
The other thing too, that still matters is having clean URLs, making sure your URL structure is nice and sound, making sure your website is mobile friendly, making sure you have a fast loading website. All right, I have a good question, Greg. So many times, obviously, in the tourism industry, we have beautiful images, awesome video content we want to put on our website, nice big in that main hero section on the homepage. But so many times they say, I don't want to add this if it slows down our website. So, what do you say to that? Is a big video, a nice quality professional video going to slow down the website?
This is always the hard question. From the user experience side of things, I always lean toward what is going to be the best experience for the user, which is hard to say. If you put a video in your hero on your homepage and it takes your page 5 seconds to load because of it, then it's probably not worth doing because there's a good chance that they're gonna abandon before that loads. If it loads in 2 seconds, they might stay, they might leave, it's hard to know, but if that video is gonna add value, it's gonna draw them in, it's gonna help them understand what you do that much quicker, then definitely do it. It's really just, weighing what's the most important to you, and there's so much. I don't remember all the numbers off the top of my head, I don't have them ready or anything, but there's like, for every second that a site loads, like, people drop off at a significant rate,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you just wanna make sure that you're not, putting it on there and now it doesn't load for 3 seconds, and there's different tactics to make it, the image just certain things on the site load faster, and depending on the platform, you can kind of adjust some of those more than others, but it's just that balance of what brings value to the user and what's gonna drive the user away, and I would always put the user first, knowing that you also need to think about what best practices are.
Definitely. And for everybody listening, if you don't know if your website loads slow or fast, go to pagespeed.web.dev. You could test how fast your website loads on both desktop and mobile. You do want to strive probably for like under 2.5 seconds to, that's you don't want to let people wait every second. As Greg said, you're losing traffic. Um,
Yeah, and
so
often, like, think about the value of it on a phone, because a lot of people
Mhm.
are looking on their phone, depending on where people are searching. If they're at home, they probably have good Wi-Fi. If you're in a more rural area that relies on, people that are booking the same day, then it might be worth hiding the video on mobile and just having an image so it loads faster because maybe they're at lunch looking up places to go or whatever, and if it's gonna load slower on their phone on, a 4G, 5G network than on their gigabit internet at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So that was page speed. The other core vitals you kind of want to look out for. You want to make sure that your website is indexed, or at least the pages you want Google to find. You want to make sure that they are indexed. Usually it depends on what website provider you're using, but I know our platform is as simple as turning indexing on. So you want to make sure the web pages that you want Google to find, Google can find, because if not, they're just invisible. And sometimes that's okay for certain pages that you don't want Google to see. Maybe they're more private, going to specific people that you don't want to rank for them. And then the other thing is building backlinks. So backlinks are a good strategy still to this day. But what we don't want to do is get a bunch of spammy backlinks. We don't need to pay a lot of money for getting thousands of backlinks. What you do want is quality backlinks. So think sources like tourism boards, hotels, travel blogs, travel influencers, local guides. Those are all really credible backlinks. And usually, an SEO company, if you're working for one, unless they have your email or have a user to email on behalf of the company, it's best for you as the tour owner or somebody in the team that is working directly with you guys to go out and find those backlinks, or at least pitch, because then it's coming from you, or trying to get on a call or whatnot to get those backlinks. But those are good too. And if you just, you know, have a little bit of time allocated to that per month, just getting one every few months can be huge. All right. So those are some technical things. I do want to go back to content because that is such a huge part. And we started with content. We went back around to technical. I want to go back to content. But Greg, anything else you could think of?
No, there's a lot of technical things we could talk about. Podcasts, probably you're not gonna be able to dive enough deep enough into it.
About
So
showing.
yeah, so if you're interested, like we're always happy to talk to people about it
Yeah.
or whatever.
And
But
you know
there's
what?
there's a ton of technical things that we could bore you
Yeah.
with. But
And we have a whole team doing our SEO strategy for our clients. So this isn't something that it's just a one person doing, SEO strategy. It takes a lot of time and effort and research to do this. So if anything, do some of those low hanging fruit items that we talked about today, like your H1s and making sure you have schema markup and making sure you have some of these things in place. Um, and let the SEO team or let an SEO manager kind of handle the rest of the technical stuff. All right. Going back. Sorry, Greg. I hope the audience is following here, but I do want to go back to content because we have a couple minutes. I think that we could share and focus on just with content because this is the fun part. This is the stuff where we could show our expertise and show what the company's mission is and the perception we want people to have. We can do this through our content. And not only is it good for the user, it's good for search engines. So, what kind of content should tour operators really be focusing on right now? Let's get specific. What are specific pieces of content that we or tour operators can be doing?
it's a great question, and it's gonna be different for everyone. It depends on what people are searching. So the best way to know what people are searching is if you have an SEO team or access to an SEO tool like SEMrush, I always call it Ahrefs, but it's Ahrefs. Then you can go in there and you can actually figure out what people are searching, and you can see what people are searching for your competitors and start creating content around those search terms. And that's going to be the best way to determine what is important to search right now and what isn't. But with AI, we kind of can do this a little bit easier. If you have like SEMrush and you have access to their API, you can actually hook their API into like ChatGPT, which makes that even better because now you can use ChatGPT to basically help search through SEMrush. That
Greg,
costs a lot more money. Go ahead.
real quick, tell me what SEMrush is, because I would assume unless you're in the SEO strategy, you might not have a clue what SEMrush is.
Yeah, SEMrush, Ahrefs, there's a bunch of others out there. They're just tools that help you do SEO things, right? Look for keywords, look for what people are asking. It has the rankings. It'll track your rankings and the search terms, how many people are searching that term. So it's just a tool to kind of figure out what to prioritize and what not to prioritize. Because you might think that, let's say, we go back to Moab River rafting, since we used that earlier. You might have that search term of Moab River rafting, and you might have a search term of, you know, river rafting in, where is that? Southeast Utah. I think that's considered Southeast Utah. Um, and like SEMrush will tell you, well, Moab River rafting, you get, let's say, 1,000 searches a month, and the other term gets you 300. So obviously, you want to focus more on Moab River rafting, unless the search intent, which means why are people searching this? If the search intent of Moab or river rafting is informational, but your page is a transactional page, maybe that other keyword is something that's transactional. Now you want to focus on that, even though it has less volume. You can focus on both depending on how close they are, but it's that type of tool that just gives you that information essentially.
Cool. One thing I want to say too is write per intention. So we changed this strategy for our own internal marketing efforts. So in the past, I would write because I had a great topic I wanted to write about. And I'm like, I'm excited about this topic. I want, to share it with the world. But it did nothing for us. So we're just wasting our time. What we want to do is look at the data and write based off of what the data is showing us. We want to interlink other blogs we wrote based off of what posts we're writing about, right? We want to do it with intention. So a lot of times we get tour operators saying that come to us looking for an SEO strategy and they say, we want 4 blog posts per week done. And we're like, why? They think, and you might think, the audience might think that that's just going to be helping with their rankings, but that's not always the case. You want to write with intention. Sometimes that might be 4 blog posts per week, but usually that's not the case. Usually it's maybe a blog post per month and it's very, very high quality and it's written with intention based off of the research that you or your SEO specialist really looked into. So that's something we're changing and we're implementing inside our agency, but our tour operators, we're doing that for them as well. Also, sometimes, we have clients that come on board and we're writing content for them and they want to 10x it or, they want to double it. So they want to write too. Although we appreciate that and we think that that's amazing, what we really want to do is give them the topics to write about if that's the case, so that it is written, with intention and they can put their spin on it, make sure it's in their tone and voice, and that's great. But we don't want to write just to write. So that's important too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Let's think any more content questions. I think that we hit the nail on the head with some of the technical sides of SEO. We talked about the content, why that's important for ranking in AI, ranking in organic on Google. Anything else you can think of, Greg, that we need to hit?
Yeah, with content, um, understand your ideal customer the best that you can. Being tour operators, you have people on the ground. You're potentially meeting your clients, your customers as well. So getting to know them, understanding them, having your guides talk to you about like the way they interact and things. The more you know about your ideal customer, the better. Obviously understanding them as a person is going to be different than maybe how they search and how they uh found you, but knowing that as well, asking that question in the booking process or in a lead capture of like how you found us is important. The more you know about them, the better. And then we've talked about this in different webinars and I think Brandon brought it up last week as well. But utilizing AI to help build that ideal customer profile, there's just so much information you can feed into a project in ChatGPT or some of the other platforms out there that then you can always come back to and always tie into to just help you understand them, write better content that's going to, make them feel better about your company or make them feel a certain emotion. You're gonna be able to do this a lot better. So I've been actually going back to my roots. I'm helping build out a website right now, and it's a horseback riding ranch in Waco, Texas. And so we have a project there with we do surveys for like, how does the client want this to look and feel? So a mood board survey. We have reviews in there. We have their old content from their current site in there. A bunch of other things, some meeting notes, whatever. We're adding all that to the project. And what that allows me to do from a design standpoint is I can go in and ask it like, I'm building this section, give me content that elicits, this emotion or explains this piece that I'm trying to write. And then I don't necessarily always take exactly what it says, but I can refine it a little bit, whether I'm refining it in AI and having it help me, write something better or taking it and improving it there. It's just a great tool for really getting quality content. And if you pair that with SEO, because that's important as well, if it knows if you're feeding it like for this page, our search term is, let's say, best horseback riding ranch in Waco, Texas. Maybe it's horseback riding in Waco. Um, if it knows that's the key term, then it's going to help you write content as well that's focused around that term that's also user friendly and Google will see it as helpful content. So we have so many tools. A lot of people in the world are not great writers, myself included, but it helps us become even better writers for our websites and content that we're building out.
I think you've made a good point because um, as we're focusing on SEO, we're focusing on, the user experience, and we're focusing on design. We're focusing on all of these things, but ultimately this helps your SEO. Think about it. Somebody comes to your website, it looks nice. It's built for conversion. So if you hear the term CRO, conversion rate optimization, you shouldn't just build a website. It needs to be built for CRO. That's going to allow people to want to stay on longer, to click certain things. And then that's just going to tell Google to show you because people are enjoying your website. The number one thing I said at this at the beginning is to not confuse Google. But the number two thing, or I would say close to number one thing, is make sure that Google wants you to provide a good user experience. Google wants to provide a good user experience, so this is really important too. So when we're talking about SEO, it goes hand in hand with CRO, so just some things to think about there.
Yeah, so I just wanna I know we're getting close to wrapping up here. Um, I feel like with AI and just SEO in general, it's really easy to overcomplicate things.
Super.
It's really easy to go into your website and just, like, freak out about what to write, what to put on there, how
You
to
like
do it.
school. But yeah.
Super, super easy. I do it still all the time when I'm designing things or writing things, whatever. What's most important is try not to overcomplicate it. Do the
Yeah.
things that are just, like, around you in the world. So when I think about a homepage, there's many ways you can look at it. When I look at a lot of homepages, there's too much on there. There's too much trying to draw me into reading or diving into a deeper topic on the homepage. But when you think about a homepage, don't overcomplicate it. Think about the 5 to 10 things that you really want people to know about your company and why they should dive deeper. So I always see it as it's the billboard. So each kind of section of your homepage is a billboard. Billboards are meant to be understood in 3 seconds or less, and if they're not, they're failing. And so as I scroll through a homepage, I should be able to see a section and understand what it's about. And if that's something that's interesting to me at this time, I'm going to be able to have a clear path forward as well. It's just like another analogy or metaphor, whatever those are called, is It's like a book. You have a novel, it has the content at the beginning. What's that called? I just went blank on
Summary?
this.
I
No,
get
the
what you
part that
mean.
says, like, chapter 1, and sometimes
Full
it'll say a little bit
content,
about chapter 1. Yeah, whatever it's called. My brain went blank, but it'll tell you, like, chapter 1, sometimes have a little bit of a
synopsis?
I don't know. I'm not good
Oh,
with that type of
now I'm
remembering
thinking.
those things, but it'll tell you all the chapter titles, right? And it doesn't tell you too much about the chapter. You have to go read the chapter. And so your homepage is the same way. You don't want to say too much. If you have an about us section, like, don't say everything about your company on the homepage. Have a little blurb that is intriguing enough to, one, build that trust, be good information that's helpful, but then also go and have a page about you that's way in depth. You might even have an about page that has a bunch of sub pages because you have specific things you want to dive into deeper. So building that content that's simple. Remember, you are talking to a human, not a computer. And so think about it in that term that how do you talk to your customers in person, and utilize similar tactics on your website so that you feel authentic and they're not, going from your website to you in person being like, this is completely different.
Yeah. And why does this matter for SEO? Is because we don't want people bouncing. We don't want people going off your website. We want people going from the homepage to learn a little bit about you to ultimately booking a tour, right? Like that's ultimately what we want. If we have people just jumping off your website because they can't figure something out, they can't figure out how to get to the book now button or book now page, they're done. They're going to your competitor. So really important. All right, Greg. I think we covered a lot today. We covered some technical things. We covered things that you could do right now. It takes a team to do a lot of this stuff, which is why we have a full team working on our clients' SEO. We even have somebody dedicated to SEO for our internal brands. We have a full-time SEO specialist on our internal brands. It takes a lot. And we have Greg and I helping with the strategy behind it. Um, so with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us for episode 4. We're super excited for episode 5 and what we're talking about there. But as always, if you like this episode, please leave us a review, subscribe so that you know when the next episode is coming out. And if you have feedback, let us know. Like, we're new to this. We're new to podcasting. So feel free to let us know if you do like something, if you don't like something. We're still in the beginning phases enough where we can make adjustments as we grow. And we don't have thousands of people listening just yet. So
Yeah. I think it's clear we're new to this. I hope you stick with us. We're figuring it out as we go, but our goal here is to serve you, help you however we can. So any feedback on us, on what we're presenting, how we're presenting it, whatever, please let us know because we want to be as good at this as possible so that we can just provide better information and make it
yeah,
some an enjoyable way to get this information because you can go and read all this online somewhere, but that isn't as fun sometimes. Just being able to put a podcast on and listen to it. So help us out because we're here to help you out as well.
I love it. Awesome, everybody. Well, thanks for joining. Bye, Greg. Bye,
See
guys.
ya.